always like to let people know that we're happy to present our learn and greets free of charge. But if anybody is interested in supporting our mission and our activities, you're always welcome to make a donation right on our website. We have a new website. It's still the same address, www.greyhoundoptions.org. And there's a donate button if you wish to make a donation to help Greyhound Options. So before I introduce our speaker, I just want to go over a few, explain the format for today's event. Our presenter will be speaking and demonstrating drawing techniques for about 45 minutes. So I encourage you all to make sure you have your pencils. I have my pencils and a pad of paper handy if you want to, try things on your own. Now I am pleased to introduce our presenter, Mark Mastel, who is an award-winning graphic designer and illustrator, and also is the Vice President of Greyhound Options. And now, Mark, you're free to open up the screen that you'd like to use for the presentation. And if you could just give us a little bit of background about yourself, and then you're free to begin.
Sure. Let me just open up the screen, share that. All right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Mastel. I am an illustrator, designer, graphic designer, jack of all trades when it comes to production and printing. And I've also been the Vice President of Greyhound Options for, I think, at least 10 years now. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to draw a cartoony greyhound. And then if we have time, I'm going to then show you using some reference how to draw a realistic greyhound. I am currently drawing in Photoshop. We were going to try to use the whiteboard, but I think at this point, I think Photoshop would be best. This is what I usually draw in anyways. If anybody has any problems or questions about Photoshop, I am very eager to ask or answer it afterwards. What I've done here is I've drawn a rough pencil sketch of a cartoony greyhound. If you have any kind of name suggestions, we can name him later because we may use this later on as a kind of a mascot for Greyhound Options. So let's get into this. Basically, this is just a quick sketch on regular paper using a 2B pencil. And what I do is I did a quick sketch, scanned it, and I dropped it into Photoshop, and then I colorized it using this blue tint. What happens is with blue is blue drops out when you either use a scanner or you can use a camera or a technical camera. So this way the black line will hold and the blue line will drop out. So what I'm going to do here is I've just got this all set up. But what I want to do is quickly show you just what we're going to do when it comes to setting up this sketch. Okay, we're going to move that layer down, turn that one off. When it comes to drawing, at least for me, anytime I have to draw something, whether it be a spot illustration or a comic book page, I always like to start off with a rough. And what I mean by that is, let me change this color for us. Make him go bye-bye. You always want to use shapes. Looking at a greyhound, we all know they have a general specific, round head, semi-round head. And your roughs can always be as loose as you want. It's tightening up afterwards that really makes everything pop. So using the sketch I had, I'm just going to roughly place in the eyes. I'm going to give him some pupils so you get an idea of where he's going to be looking. Our boy is going to need some kind of skull. because even though the brains are small, they do need the skull. The big floppy ears, we all know about those. And basically it just shapes. It's a triangle and a little bit of a attachment here at the bottom. And then same thing on the other side. We're gonna have our attachment and we've got a triangle here. Okay, so then once we've got the top of the head set, we have to always think about back of the skull, which again, if you look at it, it's all just one circle, okay? Greyhounds have that really long neck, which in this case would just be a rectangle, okay? I have a little bandana on him, so we might as well add that too. And in this situation, it's gonna be another triangle. All right. And then we'll just have a fancy little knot at the end, which is a square and 2 more triangles. So that's that point. So,
Yeah.
so that's pretty simple. Just basically, it's all just shapes. Okay. And then, like I said, we're going to tighten up afterwards. The nose. Well, we know those noses, the needle nose. Again, it's going to be pretty much another triangle, except it does have that little front part where they're underneath their nose. So we've got top of the triangle, this little extra lip, and here's our back end of the triangle. It just connects to the bottom end of the face. So triangle with a little notch at the end, and then the ever famous Greyhound nose, which never stops moving, never stops sniffing. And then we got to throw in a little bit of a slice here for the food hole, because that's all they use it for, because Greyhounds don't bark, but they do eat quite a bit. All right, so this is what we've got so far. Shape of our nose, which is just kind of an oblong. The nose itself, or the snout muzzle, is a triangle with a little notch taken out of it. Shape of the head is a circle. Got 2 eyes, also circles. We've got the ears, more triangles with a little bit of a root drawn in, and I'll add that in there. Here's the back end of this ear. Our neck, which is a rectangle. And then the handkerchief, which is another triangle, square, 2 more triangles. All right. And then down the road, I'll put in some more details on the other sketch, but this will give you a quick idea of just how to start off with the general shapes. Doesn't matter if you're drawing someone's hand, which I'm going to quickly do here. I mean, a hand is basically 6-sided . 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6-sided square. And then just for instance, you're going to have your fingers. And then the thumb. Okay. And your fingers itself are just going to be more rectangles. Okay. And then your thumb is kind of a rectangle, but it does have a bit of a curve to it. And then the one thing you always remember is the thumb is broken into 2 pieces and the fingers are broken into 3. And those are your knuckles. And then the palm itself just basically has the meat of the palm and then the knuckles and then the heel of the hand. So you can see just, it's all just shapes. So this way, if you ever want to draw someone's hand, you start off with the palm, the fingers, and then the thumb. And the best thing about drawing a hand is you have your best example of using reference is right at the end of your arm. So if you're drawing a hand, you can always use that as reference. And I highly recommend using reference. whether it be a photo or a model or using your own hand. All right, so let's take off this layer and we're going to turn on these two layers. So you can see I've already started working on that ear, but I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to start from scratch and get rid of that layer. Okay, so as you can see, this has all the shapes that I was just talking about. So we've got our two circles, well, three circles, the head, the two eyes. We've got our root, triangle, our root, triangle on the other ear, the rectangle for the neck, another triangle for the kerchief, knot, the squared off triangle for the muzzle, and then just a little oval here for the nose. And then I threw in just a little smiley face here for the mouth. All right, so once you get yourself set, you've tightened up your sketch, I would recommend using a different color. You can use a light blue pencil, red pencil, whatever color you have. If you have a gray pencil, that's fine too. And then what I like to use is I'll go in with a magic marker or a dip pen in India ink, or else I'll use a brush, India ink, or else I'll use a brush pen. Those are some of my favorite tools to use, and I'll have some examples here afterwards when we do the Q&A. All right, so I think at this point, we kind of have kind of a funny looking guy. I think his proportions are pretty good. I'm going to fix his top of his head a little bit there. But for the most part, I'm going to start just tightening this up, all right? So I'm just going to start here in the ear. I'm going to change that to black though. So. And it's just a matter of using your original sketch just as a basis, I've penciled a lot of artwork and inked it myself. I've had other people ink me, and everybody has their own take on what they see for a piece of art. So everything will look different to everybody's eye, and everybody will tackle things differently. So, and you will too. So as you can see, I've got the top of the ear coming in for the bottom of the ear. I'm going to drop that in there. Now, the one thing to remember with greyhounds is that they're covered with hair. So I'm not going all jaggedy edges on everything, but what you can do is wherever there's a nice bend, you can always toss in a couple hairs. We also know too, they have a little bit more hair in their ears. So you can toss that in there. And then, there's a lot going on in their ears, lots of ridges and folds. So you can add a little bit more detail. But don't forget though, this is a cartoon. So we want to leave it a little simple. If we want to do a full-blown, full portrait, then we're going to get into a lot of different details. All right. So here's one thing I want to show you is that here's the top of the skull. And you have to remember that you don't want to just draw from here on, because then you're going to end up with a greyhound with the ear sticking right out of his forehead. So what you want to do is always remember that the other ear is on the other side of the skull. And you just want to continue that line. I'm going to redo that. All right, there we go. So we're going to bring it down. So now you can see that it's on the other side of the head. All right, so we're going to come up, catch the ear. I'm going to throw in some fur. And we'll come down. And same thing under here. When we do the bottom of the ear, we're going to throw in a little bit of fur. Bring out the tip of the ear. And we'll come in here for the inside of the ear. And again, these, they got a lot of stuff going on in these ears. You can add a little bit of fur. And now you're looking at some pretty decent looking ears. I am going to, as I said, I'm going to make an adjustment there on this section because I think he's got a little too small of a skull. And you can always adjust your drawings as you go. Even at the ink stage, you can always cover up. So there, our boy's got a little bit of a bigger skull. So now we're going to do the back of the skull, which is just continues the circle that we had started. Again, we're going to throw a little bit of fur on there. And then we got the neck. So again, the neck is just one long triangle or rectangle, sorry. And just going to do one side. And then this side's got a little bit of a curve, which we all know about. Okay. And depending on how hairy our greyhound is, put a little bit of fur there too. So now we know they also have the throat. And it's just a matter of just following the shape. So this all here is muscle. And on the inside is the esophagus and their trachea where they breathe and they eat. So now it's just a matter of accenting that muscle with some fur. So you can imagine this muscle here attaches all the way up to the top of the skull and travels down to the top of the shoulders. Okay. We can throw a little bit of fur, and you always remember too, fur is going to go in the direction of the shape or the body form. Okay. So the bandana, again, simple rectangle here. You can always throw in a line or two because it's a piece of folded fabric. Here is our first end of the bandana. And again, it's a piece of folded fabric. So you can just throw a line in there. Here's the other end, which is the triangle. And if you look at fabric and the way it folds, you can always put a little bit of scoop there. And that kind of gives you the idea there's two planes that are being folded. All right, so let's keep working on this handkerchief. I'm going to just jump over to this line here, come across, come straight down. And then the big swoop here, all the way up. And that's not too bad. A little crooked, but I'm happy with it. So we also think fabric is going to have some folds. And because this is going to basically wrap around your dog's neck, you also want to put a little 3D or three-dimensionality to it. So you can see where his throat comes down into the fabric and then it wraps around the neck. So you've got this side of the neck chief, and it goes around the other side of his neck. And then just because it's fabric, you can throw in a couple lines. And it gives you an idea that your fabric is not just a flat piece, but it's got some what they call modeling to it, and it's got some folds built into it. All right, so let's jump over to the nose. You know, this is cartoony, so we're not going to really go anatomically correct with the nose, but what we can do is we can just start a circle, come back around the other side. We know that our guys have nostrils, so you can just put a little bit of a nostril there. And for the most part, their noses are black. So you want to come in here and just draw a general shape. Now, Mark, why didn't you fill in the top? Well, good question. The nose is generally pretty shiny. So what you want to do is you want to kind of hit this with a highlight. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger, and I'm just going to fill in this area real quick. All right. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of the darker area of the nose. And with your light source, as general, you know, the sun is always above everything. you're going to throw a highlight right here. And that kind of also gives the nose some shape. So now it doesn't just look flat. And again, the sun just hits it different ways. So as the nose is textured, it's almost, you know, like a leather. So it's going to have some bumps and some angles into it. So there's our nose. That was fairly painless. We're going to start here at the lip. It's going to just drop down and curve under. And don't forget, we're going to have a little bit of hair here. And then we've got our other lip and a little bit more hair. And just go all the way up to the big smile. And we're just going to put in some contour lines. And that way we've got a nice little smile greyhound. You can also throw in a little extra area here. That way that looks like he's really smiling. His mouth is open. And with the mouth open too, if say you're going to do a cartoon of this character, this way the mouth is open. So now you could do a word bubble and you could attach it to that. All right, so chin time, so drop it in. We'll come all the way up. And then we're going to hit the back end of the jaw. And from here, well, again, we'll put in some more hair. Same thing on the chin chin. Okay. Then the nose. So we've got a straight nose coming up. Just going to attach right there behind the eye, even though we all know it goes right up. You're also going to find that you're going to have a greyhound, like some of our people have, that have Roman noses. So if you want to, you could always give a little bit of a bump. And you do this. And there's your Roman nose. Just a simple, simple bump. We're going to stick with non-Roman today. Now think about this. His face is coming down. And if you're going to put in some fur, just want to go along with the path of the nose, because his hair is not going to come up. It's going to be coming down. Now we got the whiskers. Whiskers are fun because you can just do some circles, some dots. And then you can just throw in a couple whiskers here and there. You don't have to do every one. All right. And if we want to, we could actually throw in a couple whiskers on this side too. They're there. They're just thrown onto the face, but you don't have to be super exact. All right. Top of their nose, we all know they have a little bit of a ridge, and we can just carry that forward. And now we've got the eyes. Now this is what'll sell it, because we want to have a really nice looking eye. And I'm going to try to keep my hand as steady as possible and kind of draw a circle. And now I don't have my eyes the same size. One's a little bit, one's on the other side of the face. This one's over here, but it's kind of fun if you want to change up the eye size. This way it plays up that cartoony end of it. All right, so now pupils. You always want their eyes to be looking left, right. In this case, they're going to be looking at the viewer. So I'm just going to drop in a circle here. And I'm going to drop in another circle over here. Okay. And now you're going to ask, Mark, why did you leave that spot? Well, again, with the sunlight and what we did with the nose, because it's a dark pupil, I've added a little bit of a highlight. So with the sun coming down, that's where it would then kind of make a high spot or a highlight on the eye. And it would then include go into the black area of the eye, the pupil area. Okay. So let's see, I'm going to just get into this and draw a little bit more hair. Now, if you have a brindle or a painted at this point, let me show you that real quick. I'll just change layers here. Okay. So if you got yourself a black and white dog, I'm going to change this color. It will be black, or you'll get the idea it's going to be black, but let's just give you an idea. So say your dog has a white blaze on their chest, so you would leave that alone. This whole area would be black, and here's your fur. Okay, you would fill that in. Okay, and you also, like what we did with the nose and the eyes, if the light is hitting the back of their neck, you're going to have a little bit of a highlight. And especially with some of our grays that are, really shiny, you're going to see quite a bit of a highlight. Same thing here on the ears. You're going to come in with some color, maybe a little fur there. Fill that in. And now you just colored in that part of the ear. The head's going to be a little different because it's dome. So you want to do some shape here. And it attaches to the ear, comes over, and you just want to fill that area in. Okay. And this would also get filled in. Now, I'm not going to fill in the ears on the inside of the ears because we all know that they're lighter color. But I am going to leave some highlight on the back of the skull, and then just connect down here where we drew our throat and neck area. So if we're looking at a black dog that has a black muzzle, you also want to remember, again, highlight. So you don't want to go all the way up to this edge. You want to give them some highlight here, some highlight here. You don't have to do too much on the lower lip and the jawbone because there's not going to be too much light underneath. So again, imagine, if you will, that this red color is black, and we are painting in this color on a tuxedo dog. Okay, so there we got some little bit of color. So that'll be good for a painted or a black dog. Brindles are tough. I will be the first to admit I hate drawing brindles. But it's all about working in the stripes. And following the patterns. But you also want to keep it fairly simple too. You don't want to overdraw because then it just becomes messy. But you got those tiger stripes coming out. They don't have different stripes on top of their heads. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to bring in a piece of reference that I grabbed this morning. Bear with me just a minute. So you can see how the patterns go. So again, if you have this kind of reference, I would say definitely use it. It'll just make it that much easier on yourself. So you can see how some of the shapes go around the ears and around the skull. And you can kind of use that feathery drawing style that we did before when it came to the hair. You can see here on the side of the ear, this dog has got some pretty makeup. And then they have some brindling along the side of the face. All right. And then they also have some lines here on the nose. So again, you're going to just use these broken up lines, this feathery line, just to kind of express that there is a patterning on their fur. And same thing with the neck. You can see here where the white hits, and they've got some nice feathering here for a shape. Okay. All right, so I'm going to turn that one off. And then with painted, you know, depending on how their coloring is, you know, usually see some white coming up the forehead. Then they may have some splotches here and there. The ears will probably be colored like so. I'm just going to do this really quickly so you get the idea. All right, so kind of gives you an idea of what to do for painted. Some of the color will probably leak down the side of their skull and onto the neck. They have a little piece hidden over here underneath the handkerchief. All right, so that's a painted. All right, so at this point, I am just going to throw in some quick color for myself. You get the idea once I start laying this in that I'm just going to go fawn. It's a little easier. But we've also had fawns who've had you know, some white around their muzzle. So I'll just leave a little bit of, maybe a little bit of old age there. Again, I'm using highlights, more highlights here. Going to bring in some color underneath. And again, we've seen some of our older grays where they have some nice white around the bottom of their mouth. So you always add that in. We're going to have a white blaze on the neck, back of the skull, top of the neck. Touch up the ear here. All right, and this is what it ends up looking like when I turn off that bottom drawing. I will bring that back. I'll just have a nice simple bandana color here. Now, again, I'm coloring this in Photoshop, but you can use whatever you like. You can use match markers, crayons, colored pencils work really nice. If you've got any watercolor paints, you know, thin them down. And always remember with watercolors, you want to start off with, you want to work in reverse than you would with oils. With oils, you always want to start off dark and then come up to light. With watercolors, you want to start off with your lighter areas and then filter in the darker areas below, because again, it's going to be kind of a translucent color and whatever you paint will filter through and see through. All right, so that's kind of an idea for him. I guess we'll go brown for the eyes. I'm just going to put a little bit of a highlight there and leave it. And always remember the highlight that we made there. But you know, if your dog has the gold eyes, go for it. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight here, because the eye is a sphere, and so we'll have some highlights here and there popping in from the sun. All right, he seems pretty happy. And then, not to overdo it, but because there is white, you can always put in, to help accent where the light source is, you can always put a shadow right underneath his jaw. You can always put in some shade, some shadow here, because this is a white area. Same thing here underneath the nose and the lips. Under here. And because the ears are a flat piece, you're going to have some shadow under this flap. And the same thing over here. You're going to have some shadow under there. So I think he's fairly happy looking. Again, we turn off the rough layer. And gives you an idea, you know, we started off with this crazy thing. And then broke it down from a quick sketch to our black and white, adding in the color as we went along. All right, so I think that'll be good for our cartoony look. I'm sure people have some questions, and I'm just going to. Okay, I just saw that someone is asking, can we show what we've drawn after? Absolutely, that would be fantastic to see. I hope I didn't go too fast for everybody. One other thing I want to show you is, I'm going to start a new document. And I'll just take a couple seconds to set up. All right, so we got a blank canvas here, and I am going to bring in this guy. And just resize him really quickly. Don't worry about any of the Photoshop stuff I'm doing right now. So if you have any questions, I'll gladly answer you. So if you want to do something that's a little bit more realistic, you can always, it's always good to use reference. I highly recommend it, whether you take the picture yourself or you find a picture in a magazine or a book or on a post somewhere that you've seen. It's always good to have that reference. And this is a good idea, example 2 of the brindling that you saw that we were doing before. Same thing with the painted. And here's that little leathery nose that we mentioned, and the, the ears here in the back. Something like this, I would just start off with a quick sketch, just so I can get the shape itself. Also too, it really helps too if you're going to do this for proportions. Sometimes, you draw something from eye and you look at it and go, ooh, the head's a little big or the head's a little off. So using reference is always really good. If you have access to a light box, or if you just take your reference picture and put it underneath the paper you're drawing on and hold it up to like a window, you get the sunlight come through, and it will at least allow you to use the original reference picture for dimensions and proportions. Especially with these guys, you don't want to make that nose any much more longer. It's always good too to get the eyes just right, because it's always the eyes that catch a person's attention. Anytime I do a piece of artwork, I always make sure I try to get the eyes as best as possible. Even when doing like a piece of advertising artwork, or picking up pictures or photos for an ad agency that I'm working an ad for, you always want to find someone who's making eye contact with the reader, because then that way they associate with that person in the ad. And we'll take a quick peek on that. All right, so that gives you an idea of getting the proportions and what I would start off with. And you also see too, the neck is here, coming down. And of course, this greyhound is underneath a blanket. But then you can always add in your own parts of the animal. Here's his leg coming down. You can follow this. Here is part of their belly and another leg sticking up. So that'll give you an idea of what you can do for the realistic, just as a start. And then from here, you would add some color and start blending it and getting some shapes all throughout. All right, I think that would be it for me. We have our pal here. So if everybody's ready, I will stop sharing the screen and we can take your questions. All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you sticking with me for the past 40 minutes or so. I hope I didn't drone on too much. And I hope I gave you enough knowledge to maybe get you on your way to drawing more greyhounds. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. So as we mentioned, today we're doing this a little differently, and we're going to do the greet portion right here in this room instead of going off into a breakout room. But before, I'm sure some people may have to leave due to other commitments. Just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and a special thanks to Mark for sharing his talents. I'm always amazed at what he can do and what he does for Greyhound Options.